What is going on, people? It's G, and you guys already know what time it is. You know what it is, guys. Before we obviously start today's video, you guys can obviously see what we're going to talk about in today's video. Make sure you smash that like button, make sure you share, and make sure you do subscribe to the channel, please. Again, we are on the road to 900 subs. Hopefully we can get there before the end of September. That would be absolutely fantastic, and then we will be on the road to 1k, and obviously hopefully we can try and get that by Halloween. Spooky times. So obviously today's video, don't know how long this will be, but hopefully for everybody who's in the chat, you guys obviously find me in the chat. I really wanted to do this video and just kind of have a conversation, man. Generally just have a conversation. What do you guys think? As I said, you can see it on your screens, how to get the best out of Mac Allister. Listen, he joined the club, 35 million, release clause, paid to Brighton, had a good season for Brighton last season, obviously joined alongside, well, he joined just before Szoboszlai, and obviously we've seen how Szoboszlai has obviously started for Liverpool. He's had a decent start to life at Liverpool. But then I'm looking at Mac Allister, and I would have thought, if I looked at the two players, I would have thought that Mac Allister would be the one, who's going to come in and, kind of just slot in, again. But I've always, you guys already know, in terms of my thoughts behind Klopp and him, and as a general sense, tactically and things like that. I always said, with someone like Mac Allister, if you don't tactically set up in a way that benefits him, you're never ever going to see the best from someone like him. And I think that's what we're seeing at this current moment in time. Very, very underwhelming signing at this moment in time. I mean, if we had signed him for the same amount that we had signed Szoboszlai for, we'd absolutely be, arms up in the, arms in the air. We'd absolutely be fuming, with a signing like that, because, he's not really been delivering. Again, it's only 5 games. Liverpool won 4 of those, got themselves a draw. They're sitting just behind Manchester City in the table. So, people are going to look at it as a glass half full, and that's absolutely fair enough. And I totally understand that. But again, we've always got to look at things in the long term. We've also got to look at things in the bigger picture. And when I'm looking at it for Mac Allister at this current moment in time, I'm very unimpressed with Mac Allister. Now, he's been sent off in 1 game, albeit it got rescinded, but still, sent off in that game, was absolutely horrendous in the game against Wolves, and in the other games he's had good bits of play in there, but as an overall he's been quite meaty, if I'm being totally honest with you. And at the moment I'm just, again, it's tactically regardless of anything, but he just doesn't seem to fit in right now anyway, in the positions that Klopp's obviously putting him in the role that he's asking him to do. He just doesn't seem to really fit, and I do find that a bit weird, because this isn't the role that I expected, from him. And I don't understand why he keeps persisting, with it, in putting, Mac Allister in that kind of defensive midfield position, when we can kind of see in what we are asking our defensive midfielder to do, that doesn't really suit someone like a Mac Allister, if I'm being 100% honest with you. So I'm just wondering, when does the ball drop, with Jurgen Klopp, to kind of say, what, we do need to push him up, further up the field. We do need to get him into areas of the pitch where he can be a bit more effective. And then obviously we can move from there. But obviously we'll talk about that, we'll dive into that. Let me know obviously your thoughts. Again, I'll be in the chat anyway, so just let me know what you guys are thinking behind Mac Allister. Have you been impressed with his start? If so, what has actually impressed you, with his start to life at Liverpool? And yeah, give me your rating, for him, for his start obviously at Liverpool. And then we'll take a look into, his time obviously at Brighton, a bit at his time obviously playing for Argentina as well, the kind of roles that he takes up there, and what probably we kind of need to do to potentially get the best out of him. Otherwise he's just going to fall, in my opinion, by the wayside. But without further ado, let's dive into it.
Through the lot, now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep
Yes, people. Yes, yes. Obviously, we are here and we are back in the building. Obviously, you guys can see I am just getting up the team kind of formation and stuff. And this is from obviously from the weekend in itself against Wolves. So in that first half, anyway. Um, yeah, as I mentioned before, I really did want to speak about Alexis Mac Allister. As I mentioned, I've just not really been too impressed, with his performances, for Liverpool at this current moment in time. I'm not really seeing too much from him now. One of the main things that people keep telling me is that he's not a DM. He's not a DM. You can't put him in DM. If you do put him as DM, he needs to have this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy, and he needs to have Jesus next to him, because if he doesn't, then he ain't going to be able to perform miracles. To be honest, for me, that's all weak excuses. It's very, very weak excuses. And again, it's excuses at the end of the day. We shouldn't don't make excuses, guys. That's one thing. You guys know me. I'm very, very harsh with the way I look at the game and stuff like that. But at times there is a reason for that. And in this case, I'm not making any excuses. I don't want to hear he needs this person and that person next to him. If he's a top player, he won't need anybody next to him. He'll be able to do his job, perfectly well, and he'll be able to at least showcase kind of what he is about a little bit. And at the moment, we're seeing flashes. Of course we will do, because again, as I mentioned, he is a good player, but we're not really seeing that much, if I'm being honest with you. And again, to be honest, I mean, we could drop him and I don't think Liverpool will miss him in the absolute slightest. I don't think it'll make any difference if he isn't actually in the team. And that's not what I thought when we signed him. I genuinely believe that we were going to, sign a player who was, going to kind of be, the, I don't want to say top dog, but at least someone who would be able to affect, that midfield. A bit like what Szoboszlai is kind of doing, where Szoboszlai is coming in there, running around, picking up the ball in good positions and things like that, being a better Henderson, so to speak. We're not really seeing anything from Mac Allister. And I think that's a bit of a worrying sign for me. That is a really, really worrying sign. And, when we look at the game, at the weekend, hooked off at half time, that's how bad he was. And listen, let's not get it twisted. The team was crap. Like, the team was really, 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 really bad. So he wasn't the only one. To be honest, I could have subbed off any one of these guys, whether it be Jones, Szoboszlai, Mac Allister. Hindsight's a funny thing. People will say, "Oh, but Mac Allister, Szoboszlai did this and Jones did that." Yeah, they were all shit in that first half. So any one of them could have gone. So I wouldn't have been fussed at all. And I still think the result would have been there or thereabouts, kind of thing. But Mac Allister, he was ultimately the worst, of the three, in there in that midfield. And again, obviously we can see here, up on the screen, he's playing in that kind of defensive midfield position. People saying, that's not his position and stuff like that. But, when he was at Brighton, he was actually playing in that kind of double pivot defensive midfield position anyway. So he can do the position. Let's not act like he can never do it. If you even take a quick look here, if I take the banner off actually for you guys, again, make sure you smash the like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. We are on the road to 900 subs. We are, I think, about 80 odd away from 900. I know it's a big number, but let's hope we can obviously, guys, please share this out to your mates. You got any burner accounts? I beg you, just hit that subscribe button for me. Please get to 900. And then we're going to be working. Hopefully, if we can get that before the beginning of October, we're going to be working the whole month vigorously to get to that 1,000 subscribers. But yes, obviously, you guys can obviously see here. This is for Brighton. This is obviously last season for Brighton, playing in a 4-2-3-1 in a pivot position alongside Moises Caicedo. Every now and again, they would swap. Either it would be Mac Allister, drop deep, pick up the ball from the centre backs, or Moises Caicedo, drop deep, pick up the ball, obviously from the centre backs. This is him in a 4-2-3-1 situation where he can play a bit further forward as well, in attacking midfield behind the striker. So in this case, obviously, he was behind Danny Welbeck. This is him in a 3-4-2-1, playing in the central midfield position for Brighton. You can see that again alongside Moises Caicedo. And again, it's the exact same thing. Both of those two players would swap between each other, and they would then decide, okay, well, one's got to go, one's got to stay, one's got to do this, one's got to do that. Again, communication, able to do that, fluid system. It allowed both players to kind of do similar roles within that. But it's just, I guess, defensively, Moises Caicedo obviously was just the better of the 2, and this is obviously him for Argentina playing in a 4-3-3 setup where he's obviously on the left central midfield kind of position in that, and then obviously you got Enzo Fernandez and Rodrigo Paul just for this game specifically, you know, in those positions. But again, when I'm looking at it for Liverpool, you know, in this game, obviously against Wolves, obviously you had Joe Gomez, who was starting to do like the inverted thing. As per usual, we had this guy doing his own thing over there, and then obviously you had the 2 centre backs who were quite deep, you know, within the game. Mo Salah kind of tucked in a little bit here. Szoboszlai kind of a bit like everywhere within the game. Jones kind of more so on this side here. This was always my problem. Now, when people do say he can't play DM, the caveat I guess I would say to that is he can play DM position. I ain't getting out that easily. No way, not with me anyway, sunshine. Yeah, I mean, if you're a baller, I want to see you play that because I've seen you do it before. Problem is, when he's playing that position for Liverpool, it's this. He's always more or less by himself. Szoboszlai sometimes is there. In the game against Wolves, Szoboszlai was kind of trying to be everywhere, but by trying to be everywhere on the pitch and trying to help out and stuff like that, which is great to see, by the way, that is obviously something you want to see. You're going out of position too much. So you're just in no man's land. And then when you are picking up the ball, obviously he was just losing the ball all the time. But then you end up leaving this guy, Mac Allister, all by himself, all the time, having to mark masses and masses of big areas, you know, within on the actual pitch itself. And obviously that's not going to help him at all. It's just not going to help him. It's a bit like what we saw with Fabinho. It's a bit like what we have seen with Fabinho. Hence the reason why his legs started to go last season, or completely went last season, because he spent so much of his time. Yes, if you're fit and you're able to kind of do it, yes, you can obviously cover those kind of areas. But when you're in those kind of positions where you're constantly having to cover these big areas and you're constantly having to find yourself in a position whereby I can't get out to this position, or, you know, I can't get out, you know, to this position here. You know, Robbo's decided that, you know, he wants to bomb up and, you know, fart us around there. So the mechanics are trying to cover, you know, in these positions out in the wide areas here. Or if Joe Gomez potentially is obviously still here at the right back position, so Szoboszlai is obviously a little bit further up, it's leaving him to try and cover all of this more or less by himself, trying to slot in here, trying to help out here. And the thing is, at times I can see the effort from Mac Allister. I can genuinely see that effort from Mac Allister. I can see that he's obviously trying to do certain things. He's trying to obviously affect play and all these other various different things, which is all great and it's all good to obviously see. But unfortunately, it's not really working out for him, if I'm being totally honest with you. Hence the reason why I asked the question you guys can see scored across the bottom. Is the role of Alexis Mac Allister hindering his own performances? Because I've seen a lot better from him, and these 5 games have been super duper underwhelming, you know, to say the least. You know, I took a look obviously at his stats from last season. So obviously this is from last season. Big chances created. He was ranked 79, you know, which because he only made 4, you know, he only created 4 big chances last season. This is obviously his defensive stats from last season. 70 tackles made, so he had a 56% tackles success rate, 20 block shot, 22 interceptions, 10 clearances, 2 headed clearances, 213 recoveries, duels 1, duels lost, successful 50-50s, aerial battles 1, aerial battles obviously lost. When I'm looking here at this here, it's the recoveries I'm looking at, which is really good. His tackle success rate is really good, you know, at 56%, you know, for someone who kind of plays in those positions. But for me, that's because of the position and the way that Brighton sets up. Now, again, I've already done a scout report, so I don't really want to, like, I've got to kind of obviously dive into the type of player that he is, but at the same time, this is then to say this is how Liverpool, you know, should be ultimately trying to use him, you know, moving forward, if I'm being 100% honest with you. When we look here on the screen, I thought Liverpool were going to play almost with that box midfield, because that to me made the most sense. If you're going to play that box midfield, he needs to be at more at where the Curtis Jones position, so to speak, if that's the position that you want to call it. That's what we all thought. And to me, it just made the most sense. Because look, you see here on the half turn. Why? Because he's playing in that kind of box midfield. He's able to get on that half turn and boom, He wants to obviously run in and then obviously do whatever it is he needs to do, you know, from that kind of position. But even when he is playing in that pivot position, he needs to play it with a bit more freedom than he's playing it currently. Right now, there's way too much defensive responsibility placed upon him. Unfortunately, because of tactically the way that Liverpool set up defensively, specifically in defensive transitions, the problem that you've got is that the onus on him, the onus on other players, you know, especially in the back line, to be able to try and defend. Something that Jerry actually mentioned on his stream the other day about why we were going for look at the type of defensive midfielders that we were actually going for, you know, during the summer. So your Turams, your Kones, you know, people of that kind of ilk. You know, the reason why we were going for the Gravenberches and I'm saying defensive midfielders, these are guys who can play in that position. We didn't want a specialist number 6. That's not what we wanted, or clearly that's not what Klopp wanted. He wanted players who can play in a multitude of positions. And again, I go back to it. This is what everyone kept telling me. Oh no, don't worry, Mac Allister can play that position. He's good. He's fine. He's done it for Brighton. Blah blah blah. He'll come Liverpool. He'll smash it up. Blah blah blah. Ultimately, he's here at Liverpool and he's not smashing it up at all. He's been absolutely poor. But it's because of the way that as a team. And again, I implore you guys to go and watch Jerry, the show that me and Jerry did, the tactical analysis, because he articulates it really, really well. But Liverpool, or Jurgen Klopp, wants Liverpool to defend as a team, as opposed to having one guy to do that defensive role. Because ultimately, if you've only got that one guy to do that role, when he's not there, the team are going to obviously be playing a lot more poorly than they would. Hence why we saw with Fabinho, because that's what we've always been doing. Once Fabinho's leg goes, the whole team is going to crumble anyway. So we need to be able to, I guess, how Klopp sees. I don't really mind that, so to speak. But ultimately, for me, it's not really working. Now, I know a lot of you will point you'll point to how many goals we've conceded and stuff like that. You'll point to the fact that obviously we've won games. We've won a lot of games. We've in this, since I think it's the 16th, 17th of April of this year up until now, we're unbeaten in 16 games. But we will also look at Liverpool have 4 clean sheets in that time. That is atrocious. That is atrocious for a top team. As much as you've been undefeated throughout this time, that is atrocious to only have 4 clean sheets in 16 games. So you've got more games where you've conceded goals in than you do. I'm sorry, that's not winning you anything. That's a good cup run. Don't get it twisted. If you're talking about winning cups and maybe Europa League, and I don't care about it. Europa League, and you can concede goals left, right, and center. I don't care if you win 6-5 every single week. I'm good with that. I don't care about that. Because those are quite short in the way that it's from now up until December, and then it starts again in February till obviously the end of the season. So you could do it in these short spurts, and it's like one-off games. Premier League, it doesn't work like that. This is from August till May. You need to kind of be on job throughout that time. And defensively, tactically, the way that Liverpool set up, for me, that's why I'm not going overboard like a lot of the fan base are in terms of the way that we are obviously playing, because I just think defensively we look really, really vulnerable. We're getting away with it because, again, we've got a fantastic firepower where players like Cody Gakpo, Diogo Jota can have off games, but guess what? You can still bring on Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz off the bench. Of course, when you can do that, obviously in your attacking positions, you know, good on you kind of thing. And I'm hoping that maybe that's just the way that we, as I mentioned before on my match review, maybe that's just the way we scummy our way to a title challenge. But defensively, nobody can convince me that Liverpool look good defensively. Absolutely nobody. Because you guys all know it yourself. You all know it. You get what I'm saying? We don't need to lie to each other. We can be honest with each other while still praising the team, because it's fantastic that we actually, and you know me, I'm always been pessimistic. It's great that we've actually gone on this unbeaten run. I didn't think it would last this long, but it's fantastic that we have done so. But guess what? There's been problems within that. We haven't looked really that good. We've had a couple of games dotted around within that run, but as a whole, I've not really been too impressed. But it doesn't even matter because we're winning the games anyway. How long can that continue? I have zero idea. Absolutely zero. I've got my thoughts, but I don't really know. And nobody knows. We just hope that what me as a Liverpool fan, I'm hoping is that it doesn't even matter. Even if we concede every game, but we win every single game, do you think I'll care? Nah, man, I'll be shameless just like everybody else. And you know what I mean? I'll be celebrating, you know, that title alongside all the Liverpool fans. But I just don't see that being a thing that's going to be able to last that long into the season. But again, like I said, you know, we will just obviously have to, you know, have to wait and see. But yeah, that's kind of my thing. Going back to Mac Allister, that is kind of my thing. I just feel that we're asking him to do a role where I'm just like, instead of doing all of that, just put, if you want to do, like, if you want to, I mean, you've got Endo there as well. I mean, you signed him, gave it the big talk and stuff like that. Again, just talking nonsense as per usual. You gave it all the big talk about Endo and how important he is and blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. So use him in those positions instead. Let's get Mac Allister in these positions. I think we saw it, and I know it's only pre-season, but we saw what happened in pre-season when Mac Allister, I think he played 45 minutes in a pre-season game, one of the early ones, in this position here. I think he was on the right-hand side potentially, and I think he came on for Szoboszlai. I think they played the half each. To my knowledge, I can't remember, but I just remember Mac Allister in that game behind what Gakpo and Diogo Jota, he was linking up superbly. That's the Mac Allister I thought I was going to see. That was the Mac Allister where I said, bang, Liverpool do have, this is a bargain of the summer. At the moment, this is not a bargain of the summer. Like, this is just a deal that, it's not a shit deal, of course not, because it's still 35 million for a top player. It's just not a bargain of the summer. I'm not going to call it that. You know, I think that would be disingenuous to the actual good players that I've been seeing so far, you know, at the beginning of this season. But with Mac Allister specifically, you know, when I saw him in that game, you know, playing between the lines, you know, I'll show you guys actually here, to be honest with you. This is for Argentina. This is where Mac Allister wants to be if he's going to affect play, so to speak. He wants to be here. Now, when he's playing, obviously, for Argentina, obviously likes to play off Lionel Messi. We saw it, obviously, quite a lot during the World Cup. He likes to play off Lionel Messi. Again, let Messi, we don't have that player in our team who's like a free roam player who kind of just does what he kind of wants, doesn't really have responsibility defensively because the other players are going to obviously do that for him. Maybe if we had that, then it might be a little bit easier. But when you've got someone like that in your team, and then you've got someone like Mac Allister who can make these late runs into the box, where you've got whoever that number 9 is, I think it might be Julian Alvarez, he's about to peel off and obviously make that run in behind himself, or Mac Allister, who I think would probably be in the best space possible for that pass, because we know if Messi's on the ball, he can find it. Boom, there you go. There's your kind of goal. And when I was looking here, this is from footballanalysis.com, you know, they were just talking about Mac Allister and, you know, how they kind of, so this is before his move, you know, to Liverpool. If I just take the van off, yeah, this was before his move to Liverpool. And they were just saying, defensively, there's also more to ask from Mac Allister. When operating in a midfield 2 or part of a 3, he scores on the lower end in defensive duels in comparison to other players in the Premier League. Now, again, when we look at that and we look at those kind of things, I'm not even too fussed about that, because that's not the type of player that I'm kind of looking for, you know, within my team, if I'm being 100% honest with you. But it's there anyway. Though Brighton's playing style and preference to press high up the pitch to force a mistake should be factored in, if Mac Allister were to operate at the base of a midfield 2, there may be times when he could be caught out or bullied against physical sides. Again, we've seen that this season. I've seen him get bullied. I've seen him get caught out. I've seen him all over the gaff. You know, I'm looking at a play and I'm like, he's really treading water at this current moment in time. You know, again, like I said, it's because tactically we're not playing to his strengths. Obviously, we can see with someone like a Szoboszlai, we can see that he's quite an industrial midfielder. We can see someone who can play in both phases, both defensively and the attacking phase of play. He's good further up the field, but he's also quite composed in that deeper positions, as we've seen in various different games, and he's very, very industrial. But again, Mac Allister isn't that type of player, but guess what? I don't want him or need him to be. For me, this is Thiago all over again. What I'm seeing, and even with Szoboszlai, even now, what I'm seeing the most, which we rarely ever saw with Szoboszlai last season, not to say that people weren't looking before anybody gets onto me, but not to say that people weren't focusing on these things, because we were focusing obviously on other areas of their game to see how they can fit in. But one of the main parts of Szoboszlai's game, as an example, was in that attacking area, because we saw it via his goals, via his assists, his touches in and around those areas, passes into the final third, you know, how he's able to press in those kind of areas, etc., blah, 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 in that area of the pitch. Now, what I'm seeing quite a lot from Szoboszlai at the moment is, and from how I'm looking at it at the moment, I think everyone should get the idea that this guy's going to get you a bundle of goals, because it ain't happening. You know, I think he'll be lucky to even get himself 5 goals. You know, the Europa League might just boost it up a little bit. But for me, I feel like if he was to touch 10 goals, I'll be so surprised. I would actually be genuinely surprised, because obviously the role that we're getting Szoboszlai to do within this team is more to just be kind of the guy in the middle, who can, again, like I said, a bit like a Henderson. People don't want to admit it, but it's the truth. Like Henderson, run around, affect play that way. But the difference between him and a Henderson is that he's actually better on the ball. He's got a lot better technique. So that's the only difference I'm noticing within the two players. Mac Allister, on the other hand, I'm watching him and I'm thinking to myself, why are you getting a guy who, if you're going to play with him at the DM position, that's fine. But you're going to need to play in a double pivot then. You're going to need someone alongside of him, whoever that might be, whether it's Endo, Szoboszlai, whoever, Curtis Jones, you're going to need, and you're going to need someone a bit more defensive minded. That's probably where I see someone like an Endo coming into the picture, because you need someone there who is still comfortable on the ball, but is just better defensively and understands the game better, defensively than someone like Mac Allister. Because Mac Allister, when he's in those deep positions, what he is good at is getting the ball to feet from the centre backs, taking the ball under pressure and then popping it back to the centre backs, popping it out wide if he needs to do that, etc., etc. What he doesn't want to be what he doesn't want to be doing is running around, trying to chase shadows. By the time he does get the ball, this guy is blowing hard paws because he's had to do this job and that job, and he's covering this space, he's covering that space. Other players should be doing that. Robbo, I'm tired of Robbo anyway, in a general sense. Like, happy that he got his goal, but I'm just tired of him and his lack of discipline, within the team. Gomez, in that game anyway, he's not an inverted fullback. He's not good at doing it. He's very uncomfortable doing it, clearly. And he's not really that good offensively anyway. So, of course, there's going to be teething problems with that. So it'll be better anyway when someone like a Trent Alexander-Arnold gets back. But when we're looking at someone like Mac Allister, I don't want to see him doing all of these things. I don't want to see him here, there, and everywhere. He's someone who wants to get the ball in these kind of areas. But if he is going to get the ball in these areas, which again, I've got no problem with at all, he can't be getting the ball in these kind of areas. And okay, the first thing I want you to do is bang, bang. Obviously, it works for the Chelsea game. Cool. It worked for that one moment, and that's why I say he's got it in his locker to be able to do those kind of things. I'm not saying that he can't do those kind of things, but that's not really his game. That's not his game. That's not where we're going to see the best, in my personal opinion, of someone like an Alexis Mac Allister. If you take a look here, when he is in those attacking positions, you can see pressing from the front. This is against Aston Villa last season, obviously. You can see he's ready to pounce. He's ready to go. And he's really good at doing that. I've seen him even do it for Liverpool this season, but he's actually genuinely good at doing this anyway. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if he can do that, why not get him further up the pitch? Because he can dispossess players quite well. He's good. Like, that's kind of one of his like main things, main traits, about him, is that he's able to obviously affect the game further up, if he needs to. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, put him a bit further forward. As we've seen so far, obviously it's only been 5 games, so maybe a bit more. I'm not saying that you need to, rubbish him or anything like that, or I'm definitely not trying to say that, and I need people to kind of understand that, because I know people are going to think, oh, you're being too harsh. It's not really about even being too harsh. For me, it's just purely about being able to see that someone isn't really that comfortable with the position that he's obviously playing in. And what we've seen so far from him in those kind of positions is that he's not really, in my personal opinion anyway, kind of working out. Again, for Brighton, in that double pivot position, heck, they've even got Gross there alongside, Caicedo, with Ferguson and obviously Alexis Mac Allister. Obviously, they've obviously moved around and, because of the passages of play that they've done. But you can see here, Mac Allister, where's he picking up the ball again now on that half turn in that left central midfield position? That is the position that we're going to see the best from him. It's the position that everyone keeps ranting and raving about when we watched him for Argentina, during the World Cup. That's the position that I feel need to be putting him in. Now, obviously, reading this here, this is all from footballanalysis.com, so you guys can check this out for yourself. Although Mac Allister often plays an offensive role in midfield, he does struggle to directly create chances for his team. I showed you guys the graphic earlier on before. If I take it back here, this is last season. He only created 4 big chances last season. I mean, he's behind abundance of players. I mean, he's ranked joint 79th. So Lord knows what that even looks like. But this is due likely to the tendency to retain possession rather than risk a defense splitting pass. And again, this is why I kept trying to question people and ask everybody, what is it that you're seeing? with Mac Allister that makes you think this guy is going to get you a bag of assists, he's going to get you bare goals. He doesn't score goals from open play anyway. We already have a penalty taker. And to be honest, he'd probably be third in line anyway behind the Szoboszlai if Mo Salah didn't take one. And then, yeah, probably Mo Salah, Szoboszlai, and then Mac Allister. So his chances of taking penalties are kind of slim to none. So where's he getting goals from? Again, a midfielder I don't see getting himself goals. But yeah, everyone kept telling me this is a guy who's going to get us bare goals, bare assists, blah, blah, blah. Can you guys realistically, honestly tell me here right now that you see that happening? Because I don't see that happening at all. Did you get what I'm trying to say? And again, that's not to slight him, because that's not the type of player that he is. It's just to show everybody what you guys were telling me. And I'm only going based on the things that people were telling me. Hence the reason why I'm judging him based on what I've been told was he was going to come in, be this mad influential player in the midfield. He's going to come in, create bundles of chances. He was going to get you assists. He's going to get you goals. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Take free kicks. Take penalty. It's not, nah. Remember, you're playing for Jurgen Klopp. That guy stifles creativity like no man's business. So he ain't going to get him doing that. He needs his players to be in the team to do a job, to do a role. And that's exactly what he's trying to do at this current moment in time. This highlights another quality, key quality. Mac Allister is a willing runner and has fantastic off the ball movements. We've seen it. We've seen him making those late runs. We've seen him peeling off to that left hand side. We know what he can do when you do give him that freedom. Under Lionel Scaloni's Argentina, he was often deployed on the left side of a midfield three. Mac Allister was incredible when making runs off Messi, whether that was towards his captain as a passing option or to provide depth to Argentina's play by making dynamic runs in behind opposition defenses. As I mentioned before, and as I showed you guys before, this is exactly what we want to be seeing from Mac Allister. Now, I thought when we got in Endo that we was going to start seeing that. Obviously, we still got Gravenberch to come in as well. Going to be very interesting to see how does Gravenberch do, a guy who's not really played too much football. But again, going back to Mac Allister, when we're looking at Mac Allister, how is he going to be best implemented moving forward? I think a lot of people spoken about a 4-2-3-1 formation. We could potentially play something like that. To be honest with you, I think for me, I personally would like us to just ditch this three at the back crap, because it's never really a three at the back. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing something kind of along these kind of lines here, to be honest with you. You can have Mo Salah kind of there. Szoboszlai obviously will peel out if he needs to. Then you've got someone just next to him, someone who's a bit more industrial, someone who can do that legwork. Because guess what? I would be probably more comfortable with Mac Allister in these tight spaces still, even now, as much as I'm criticizing him, than I would be Szoboszlai, because I know what Mac Allister can do in tight spaces. He is such a acute player in those kind of positions. Not to say Szoboszlai cannot do them, not to say he's rubbish at them or anything like that. So people don't, again, you always got to explain yourself, because everyone likes to go off on comments and things like that. Not to say that he can't do that, but I think Mac Allister is better at doing that. So Szoboszlai is showing me anyway that he can be that midfielder. He can play in various positions within the midfield, DM, centre mid, or attacking midfield, but he can play those quite efficiently. For me, for Liverpool. For me, Alexis Mac Allister for Liverpool can't play in that DM position, unfortunately. So you need to get him in. Either if you are going to do it, then you're going to need to be a double pivot at the most. But I don't see us realistically doing that at this current moment in time. But if not, then you just need to get him into these positions. That's it. That's all I'm realistically asking for, is you get him into this kind of box midfield, so to speak. You know, if you want to do that, let's say you've got these two here. Obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold, when he comes back in, as I mentioned, I mean, I want to still ditch this 3/4 at the back, but I'm trying to be as realistic as possible, and I'm just trying to think of ways that we can implement him within the style that we're most likely going to use. So if you are gonna have him there, just have him in something like that. Yeah, we can actually just play with the three at the back. And guess what, Klopp? Maybe, just maybe, you don't get him doing this. Maybe he just stays at that left centre back position and only gets forward when we need him to get forward. When we need him to. As I've mentioned, me and Enz did the show, the flip of the coin, when we looked at the Manchester City versus Newcastle game. What you don't see is this, and then these two guys just left stranded here. You don't see that at all, because what will usually happen is Rodri, as an example, will slot back in here. What they will do is overload one side, but they still have the security of this side here. But there's only one side that's overloaded. So at the time, it would have been the right-hand side, obviously, with Kyle Walker, or it could be the left-hand side where Jack Grealish is obviously on that side, but it might just be Kyle Walker might be the one player. If I just put him back here, let's move these guys just to make a bit more sense. So what they'll do is they'll overload this side of the pitch. So let's say the right back is, let's say this player here, Gomez, is Kyle Walker. They'll overload this side, but guess what? These guys do this. These guys do this. You've still got this guy who will stay in this kind of position, not all bombing up here and do it. Like, it just needs to be a lot more fluid. That is my only issue when I am looking at Liverpool, is that nothing for me seems to be fluid. Yes, let's praise Klopp. He made the substitutions. He brought on the players. Still played more or less in the same kind of way, but you had, I guess you can say you had, well, for me, actually, no, he still played in the same kind of way, to be honest with you. He just swapped the players around. So Szoboszlai wasn't tasked to play right central midfield. He got dropped back into the DM position. Curtis Jones, you can say he was a little bit deeper. I will give him that, you know, in the game, because we were kind of playing, it was kind of a 2 in the midfield. But for me, it was purely just down to the fact that Wolves had just penned themselves. Wolves had just dropped back, you know, tired, couldn't really, you know, keep up with play and stuff like that. You know, they were just trying to hold it and sit it in. Hence the reason why most of their game was about trying to counter attack. So then you ended up having Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai sitting in that kind of midfield, but both of those two players were still taking the ball and trying to go forward anyway, which would then leave one of those players. And at times it was leaving a massive gap in behind them, that if Wolves are a bit more cuter with the ball when they were getting that ball out to those wide areas, if they had more runners like Bellegarde, if he was able to keep it up, if they had more late runners, it would have been more problematic for Liverpool. So again, it's one of those kind of things, you know, that I'm seeing anyway. But in terms of just looking at Mac Allister as a whole, for me personally, I'm just not too happy with everything that I'm seeing, but I still have faith that we're going to be able to get the best out of him. I just think that we do need to play to his strengths. That is all I'm asking for. Play to his strengths, and I guarantee you guys will see a better performing Alexis Mac Allister. Don't play to his strengths. This guy is going to be riding the bench with all Thiago and start getting put down into the basement with these guys until he learns. And unfortunately, what that then means for Liverpool moving forward, I don't really know. And that's why I wanted to ask you guys, when we are looking at someone like Alexis Mac Allister, are you genuinely happy with what you're seeing? If you are, then you are. Let me know why you're happy. What is it about Mac Allister, you know, that you're seeing within the team? Please, please, please do not give me the excuse that he's not a DM. I'm going to refute anybody who does mention that. Because it's a lie. He can play the DM position, but we are just not playing that DM position to his strengths. But he can play in the DM position. But obviously you can see clearly he's someone, every single game that he's played, this guy just looks like he needs to come off after 60 minutes every single time. Everyone else looks calm. Szoboszlai looks calm. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it doesn't look like he needs to come off, but he always looks like, yo, I am tired. I need to get off this pitch. Why? Because the game's passing him by too much. He's getting bypassed quite a lot in games. He's having to do more running, which is fine to, you know, to a certain degree, but he's doing so much running that now it's hindering, you know, his actual on the ball ability, because when he does get the ball, mentally he's already tired, as well as physically being tired as well. So yeah, it's one of those kind of catch-22s. Obviously, as it says here, how to get the best out of him. Let me know what you guys think. How do we get the best from this guy? What do you want to see moving forward? You know, is it just, again, it's only been 5 games as well. So I like Mac Allister, just to reiterate. I do want him to do well. I just think that at the moment, for me, the prediction I had from him was that, yeah, we're just not the right team for him. I think he would have done better at Manchester City, or he should have actually just stayed at Brighton for another season and just played with them, because they play to his strengths and they play the type of football that I think would be conducive for someone like him to be able to play. We play a bit too specific, and if you can't meet those specifications, yeah, you end up seeing it, you know, in tenfold. But let me know, obviously, what you guys think about Alexis Mac Allister. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm G, and we are out.